Hey everybody, welcome back. New driver out. It is 610.62. There's a couple interesting things about it. I'm going to look at this real quick and then we'll do a test flight and look at the benchmark numbers. The things that are interesting about it is improved stability in multi-monitor configurations. I know people have had issues with that. The other thing I've seen is an issue where certain monitors would not wake from sleep mode. And so those are the two big things that jump out at me. The other thing some people may have seen, or the users may observe DLSS settings being grayed out in certain games after updating to the last driver 615.47. So that's got to be a typo because this is 610.62. So what they mean is 610.47, which was the last driver. So I'm going to do the update real quick. And I'm also going to check. So I used the automatic shader cache updater in the NVIDIA app, and some people have said that it's not doing anything. So we're going to check that today too and see whether it is or not. So let me download the driver. Now we'll install it. Again, always custom installation. And then there's no update to the PhysX, and I do not want the HD audio driver. And we'll install the driver now. All right, the driver's been installed. Here is my DX cache folder. These are my driver shaders. Let's take a look at what happens when we update them in the app. All right, so we come here to graphics and global settings, and we come down here to shader cache. We click on this. There's a couple things we can do. We can clear the cache, and we can do compile now. That's what I did last time. Let's click clear cache here. And this action will delete the majority of the files in the NVIDIA shader cache. Will force a rebuild. So let's do that. Shader cache cleared. Now we go here to that same DX cache folder, and you can see, I didn't scroll down to see how many files were in it, but there were a ton. And all those shaders are gone. Almost all those shaders are gone. The only ones that are left are from today. So now let's click on compile now. You can see shader compilation is in progress. Let's go back to the shader cache folder. Okay, so that's what it's given us. So that's that. Apparently it had what it needed. So let's get into the sim and see how this driver performs. All right, here we are in Anguilla. We're ready to do the flight test. I've made 2 adjustments to my testing that I'm going to use going forward to be consistent. Number one, I'm going to be using a preset. I'm using few clouds. I've always used live weather in these tests. And I'm also going to be starting them all at noon. So we're going to eliminate 2 variables so we can get consistent numbers. So let the testing begin. All right, let's go toes on the brakes. Go rotating beacon on, mixture rich. There is no carb heat, master and battery switches on. There is a fuel pump, oddly enough, in a high-winged airplane. Fuel pump is on. Take a look outside. First impressions, very, very smooth in panning, which is really nice. Let's crack the throttle, toes on the brakes. And there's a good start. Let's get that throttle up to 1,000 RPM. All right, oil pressure is good. Avionics master and battery coming on. Fuel pump coming off. Go taxi light and nav lights on. We'll lean the mixtures for taxi. And first impressions are this driver is very smooth. And let's set the altimeter. So, looking good. Let's release the parking brake here. And let's get moving. Very smooth. So the last driver was super, super smooth. 610.47. And I mean, this one, perhaps even more so. I mean, it looks really, really good. So let's see what we get here. Sorry for constantly resetting the head position. You have to get it right at the start of a flight. I'm using my Tobii Eye Tracker 5 here. We'll go landing light on, nav light on, taxi light off, and mixture forward. And we got enough distance to get off the ground here, so I'm not going to back taxi. Well, I'm going to back taxi a little bit. So, I've been doing a lot of testing recently, and a couple thoughts. Number one, I always get comments about why do you upload the entire video? Why not, you know, just parts of it? And the bottom line is that there are some people who like watching. This is going to be about a 35-minute flight. There are some people who enjoy watching it, and so therefore I shall let them watch it. And for anybody who doesn't want to, it's perfectly fine as well. You can fast forward through it and skip to the parts you want. I'm gonna set chapters so you can go look at the approaches and the landings, and if that's what you want, that's perfectly fine. But I am going to do what I've always done, but the other thing is with testing. So I started doing some new testing the other day, which will continue today after I record this. All right, mixtures and props. There is no prop. Mixture full forward. No need for a fuel pump. Lights are on. Heading indicator checks with the runway number. And get ourselves on center line. Takeoff power is coming in. Takeoff power is set. Want at least 2350 RPM. Airspeed is alive. Rotation speed is 55 knots, which I'm not crazy about. And remember, it's rotation speed. It's not the speed at which you break ground. So pitch for VY here, roughly anyway. And everything is looking really pretty. Alright, 400 feet AGL, we can start our turn. Really smooth with the panning. 1,000 feet AGL. No flaps to bring up. The mixture is already rich. Don't have to pull back on the power quite yet. Nice standard rate turn here. Pitch the nose down here just a little bit so we can see over it better. Got about a heading of about 235 should be good. 240, let's do that. So, no Anguilla stutter to speak of, which is nice. Matter of fact, they updated, it's 50 feet below our cruise altitude. Pull the power back until you hear a reduction in engine power, and that should give you a pretty good approximation of where you want the power. I want it to finish out at about 2400, and as you trim the nose down, your RPMs are going to increase. So you see it started at 2350, and now I'm trimming nose down, and it's at now 2420. So we'll just pull it back just a little bit. Perfect. Not too bad there. These few clouds are looking beautiful. So I started testing airliners. I found a route that I like to test airliners. So I'm gonna, and I didn't. So I did my first baseline run a couple days ago, and I didn't do it with the idea of testing this driver. However, why not? So I'll test this driver with the against the there's fuel pump on against the baseline. And we'll see how it does, but so I'll be flying the you'll see the video. I want to be flying the Phoenix A320. So I want to get some good standard. I'm really trying to standardize my testing so to take out as many of the variables as I can. And I'll emphasize once again, the only thing I am testing for is smoothness. It's the only thing I care about. Because I mean the visuals are great, you know. There's nothing to complain about there. I mean I'm in 2K, you know, pretty high settings. I'm very happy with my settings. I'm very happy with my performance. And the goal isn't a perfect stress test. It's not the goal of what I'm doing. The goal of what I'm doing is to test against the baseline and see how the driver changes. You know, see how performance. See how it changes, because it can. I've had, you know, it's funny. I've had really only maybe 2 or 3 bad drivers out of the last 20 or more. And what I find kind of funny is that you know, kind of the negative feedback that I get on these tests is always pretty consistent. That I don't test a difficult enough scenario because I always test this scenario. And that the videos are too long. Those are kind of the two things. But to me, the only thing that matters in testing is consistency. And it's not a max performance test. I'm not trying to find out, can I get 69 FPS or 70 FPS or 72? That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to see that my frame times are consistent, that they're low, and that because low frame times and little variance between frame times is what we call perfection, or what I call perfection anyway. Coming into Princess Juliana International Airport, I have some really interesting things going on with the channel that I'll talk about during this little trip. I've started doing a series of live classes on instrument flying, and it's already, I mean, I just did my 5th one yesterday. I've been doing 2 a week for the last, this is now the 3rd week. And I've been really enjoying them. And what's cool is that, there we go, that's what I want, is on both. What's really fun about the classes is that, actually I'm gonna leave it on the right, because I want to balance out the fuel. It's still have a little bit more in the left tank than the right tank. Or the other way around, in the right tank than the left tank. Why did I take off with 8 gallons of fuel? So this is kind of Vujade, deja vu. So yesterday, well, I'll get back to that. So, and I started off, and what I thought I was going to be doing was, I thought I was going to be doing sort of more bookish, I guess the term would be. More bookish, and absolutely no stuttering whatsoever with the panning. It's really, really good. So we're under 110 knots. Let's go notch of flaps here. Angling in a little bit for the approach, but I'm not gonna go a straight left base, but we're well, we pretty much are. So that the east, the 090 heading is right on that left hash mark, which means it's runway 10. So if I had no, other way. So if I brought this around to where I have 010 right here on this left hash mark, then if we look outside, that is technically a perfect left base. I forget what the runway heading is actually, but in any event, the first class I did was on, and they're all on my channel. They're in the live section. You can watch them, watch the recordings. And the first one was about how to read a chart. This is really poor. I mean, I was just showing you how to set up a perfect base, but in any event, there's 1700. Let's pull the nose up here. Get back into the white arc. Just gonna keep a little bit of power in because I don't want to drop the airspeed too much right here on short final. Once we get in a little closer, I'll put in that next notch of flaps and bring the power back a little bit here. And we're right on glide slope, so there's second notch of flaps and bring some power out because the nose is going to have that tendency to pitch up. Now I just want to keep an eye on my airspeed. Airspeed is doing just fine. Boy, is this smooth. No stutters whatsoever. Rolling in here. Power's all the way out. Alright. Let's take a look at my trim. Trim is fine. I'm up 2 notches on the flaps. Absolutely 0 stutters coming in there. That is it. In a Sobo stock airport, which you can have some stutters on short final in this airport. Absolutely none. Sounds like my airplane's about to rattle apart here. I find it hard to believe that VY is about 12.5 degrees nose up, but 10 is a little more believable. Yeah, so I did how to read a chart, and then our second one was what was the second one? He says as he flies into a mountain. I haven't had a single stutter yet, like none, 0. And actually, in a situation like there was one right there, famous last words. And actually, in a situation like this where you've got terrain, and I didn't turn early enough because I'm too busy flapping my gums, you might want to pitch for VX, which is an uncomfortable. You can see it right there. VX is about 63, 62 knots, which is an uncomfortable speed to climb at because you're really pitched up. But I was not paying enough attention to my departure and got uncomfortably close to terrain. Do I have a notch of flaps in it? I do not. And then I did one on VOR navigation, and by my own standards, I was not happy with that particular class. And for those of you who don't know, I am an FAA certified instrument ground instructor, so I actually can give a class on such a topic. But it's been so I guess kind of I got to a point in the instrument in the VOR navigation class where I was like, you know what, it's just better to get in the plane and do some do some demonstration. And so I did that, and there was a lot of interaction. Airplane is still tipping wildly to the left here. There's a lot of interaction. It was a lot of fun, and so I decided for the class yesterday that what I was going to do was just brief an approach and fly it, and that's what we did. And it was really great, and we had it was about 2 hours and 15 minutes. We had a great time. A lot of really good questions, like really good questions. So I entitled it brief and fly, and so we briefed the approach, and then we flew the approach. And it happens to be an approach near my home airport in the real world, and it also happens to be an approach that I flew for my instrument check ride, one of my 3 approaches for my instrument check ride. And so we had a lot of fun doing that. So I think I want to really kind of focus on that, and I'll do some academic stuff. I mean, VOR navigation is important because you have to understand VOR navigation to fly VOR approaches, right? And also it's also useful for navigation, and I find stuff like that interesting. And I know that the sim community is, there's a lot of purists, there's a lot of people who are looking for realistic flight experiences, and I'm the same way. I mean, I fly the same way in the sim that I fly in real life. And I've just realized an error in my logic here. Fuel pump on. So the airplane is tipping to the left, and I'm burning fuel out of the right tank. What do you think that's gonna do? It's gonna exacerbate my problem. Because I'm the only person in the airplane, and I'm sitting on the left-hand side. What I want to do is, and I do this in real life too, is burn fuel off the left first, so that the left fuel load is a little bit lighter, and it helps balance the plane out. Although I've said a million times the effect of an unbalanced fuel load in the airplane, or unbalanced weight load in the airplane, is very much exaggerated in this sim and in all flight simulators, really. But anyway, we had a really good time. I felt like it was really informative, and like I said, great questions. And at the very end of the flight, and so one of the things that I said during the I'd done a flight earlier in a previous class, and I had made the mistake, what I consider the mistake of I pushed past a decision altitude and landed on an ILS below minimums because I just didn't feel like going around. The class had been going on for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I would just want to, it's not that I just wanted to get it over with, but like my thinking was, the classes pretty much were ready to be done. And so rather than, fly a missed approach, and I'll just land below minimums, and we will, that'll be the end of it. Well, predictably, landing below minimums did not go well, and that's why you don't do it. I shall we say, I mean, didn't crash, but I certainly I overflew the Pappies, or almost overflew the Pappies, until I realized what was happening. And then I and I put a lot of thought into these classes and into the decisions that I make, and I've got the runway heading bugged here, so runway 12, so that I always know which direction the runway is. It helps you visualize what you're doing. So I'm going to pull back about 200 RPM, and we'll let the nose come down here. And so what I decided was I'm never doing that again. Like, I will never not go missed when I'm demonstrating IFR techniques when I should, because that's literally the worst thing you can teach somebody. And so, and you can see when that hash mark, which is the runway number, is at our 180 degree position, then that means that we are in a perfect downwind, right? And the airport is in the next valley, so you can't really see it. But that is that. So yesterday we did we talked for about 40 minutes about the approach. It was a really interesting approach because there's a couple unique features about the approach. Number one, or the main one, is that you can identify several of the waypoints in different ways, which is pretty neat. And so we talked through that, and then we got in the plane and we flew it. And I flew the approach, I flew the mist. Just want to continue out here for a little bit. I flew the mist, and then we flew the hold, and we talked about the hold. And then and that was all in it was in mostly VFR conditions. And let's see here, I want about. And then now we got the wing up. Let's look down. Final's clear. And then what I did was set the weather to poor, set the weather to like rainy, and then a second notch of flaps here. So I need the drag.
500.
Let that nose come down just a little bit more so it stays on the 75. And then I flew the approach in IMC. And I told myself, if I don't break out at minimums, I'm going missed. And I didn't break out at minimums. So I went missed. There's a little hitch right there. We're looking for 65 over the numbers. Or over the threshold. 66, we did pretty well. Power is out. I touched down a little earlier than I thought I would, but that's alright. One little hitch there coming in. We're below stall speed. I can pull the yoke back into me lap. Gives you aerodynamic braking. Let me show you what So when you get below stall speed, which is the bottom of the white arc, if you pull the yoke back in your lap, the elevator comes up into the airstream and can help. It just helps you brake. It also, that's a nose up input, and so that puts more weight on the main wheels, which are the ones that have the brakes. There's no brake on the front wheel. There's only brakes on the two main gear, and so if you pull the nose up like that, you can't really get it off the ground. It's 'cause you're below stall speed. You're not going to get it off the ground, but it gets the nose wheel light and gets the weight on the main wheels, and it makes the brakes a little bit more effective as well. So this airport, you can get some stutters. Didn't have them on 610.47, which was an improvement over previous drivers. Boy, this one's fantastic. It's a tailwind landing. I think this driver is very, very good. We'll see by the numbers, but I didn't get a single stutter with the last one. Not a single one. So, mixture is rich, flaps are up, trim is good. Get on center line. Heading indicator checks with the runway number. Takeoff power is coming in. Takeoff power is set. Engine instruments are in the green. Airspeed's alive. 55 is rotation speed. Okay, it's a 2-knot tailwind, so. And I'll show you this. So this, I was telling you about VX before. So this is VX. And it is uncomfortable in real life. It's usually what you use VX for is just to climb over and like if there's like trees at the end of the runway. So you only use VX until you reach like 100 feet above the ground. And then you pitch down for VY. VX is the greatest rate of climb. So it's the maximum amount of altitude gained over a distance across the ground. VY is best angle of climb. So it'll get you to an altitude fastest. So we'll go to 1500 here. But so what happened was I missed on the approach. So I didn't break out at minimums. And what was funny is I literally broke out. Not broke out, but I got the runway environment in sight at about 5 seconds after I hit the power to go missed. Which is so typical, right? And I was talking about the fact that the one thing you can't do is go looking, right? So if you hit your if you hit your descent, your decision altitude on an ILS or an LPV, you hit that decision altitude and you don't see the runway or the runway environment, hit the power, go missed. Don't keep looking around hoping you're going to find the runway, because what you might find is the ground. People kill themselves that way all the time. But anyway, so I went missed, and I was about, like I said, I saw the runway about 5 seconds after I hit the power, and it's tempting to say, okay, well, let me pull the power back and see if I can make it. But I stuck to what I said I was going to do, and that's the other thing about flying. You have to make the decisions about the things that you're going to do before you're in the situation where you have to do them, right? So you have to decide on the ground, what am I going to do if I lose power on departure? You have to decide on the ground, what am I going to do if I hit, my decision altitude and don't see the airport, don't see the runway. You have to make those decisions on the ground. What am I going to do if I'm flying cross country and weather deteriorates below my personal minimums, whatever those minimums are? You have to make those decisions on the ground, and then you have to execute those decisions without question in the air, right? And that's what I did. Very proud of myself. And we were climbing out on the missed approach in IMC. And I thought, I was kind of thinking, okay, well, now do I go and fly the mist or to the hold? Do I maybe self vector back around and we'll do another approach to end the class? But I mean, we'd been going for 2 hours and 10 minutes at that point, and I thought that was sufficient amount of time. But I mean, nobody was really complaining that we were taking so long and so on and so forth. So I thought, we'll just keep flying here a little bit. And then the engine died. Just sputter, dead. And my first thought was it was in the WBSim JP Logistics Cessna 152, which is a great little airplane. Actually runway 11 nowadays, so we'll bug 11. Great little airplane. And so I flipped on the carb heat. That was the first thing I thought to myself, was it's probably carb ice. So I flipped on the carb heat, and I was expecting the engine to come back, honestly. I'm going to come back about 150 RPM this time, not 200. I find that if you bring the power back in 100 RPM increments in this airplane, it's a little bit more realistic. And the real airplane, what I would do is go from maybe 2400 RPM to about 2100 RPM right now. But I find that if you do that, it gets into a descent rate of like 800, 900 feet a minute, and that's not what you want. So I pull it back to like 23, I'll let it settle. Pull it back to 22, let it settle. And anyway, so I was fully expecting the engine to come back. It didn't. It didn't. And so I'm thinking, all right, well, now what the heck do I do? And as I was sort of going through that mental process, go notch of flaps here, I broke out of a kind of a space in the clouds, and I could see the ground. And so I thought, okay, well, rule number one of an emergency in IMC, or on an instrument flight of any kind, rule number one of an emergency, if you are in VMC, even if you're filed IFR, you're flying IFR, if you are in VMC when the emergency happens, stay in VMC. Don't go back into the clouds dealing with an emergency. And an engine out is an emergency. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm in this little kind of area of no clouds. I'm certainly not going to get back into the clouds. And so I looked around. I found, I was really actually pretty happy with myself. Found a, and you can go watch this in it's Brief and Fly is the title of the stream. There's 85 knots. What I want on base. And so what I did was I found a field. And I angled for that field and I made it. And I was happy with my thought process, because not only was I looking for the field, but I realized that when I found the field, and now I'll go second notch of flaps here as I roll out. Sometimes I'll wait on the flaps if I'm on glide path, but in this case I'm not. Let me get back into the white arc here. 85, second notch of flaps. Fight the nose coming up here. But what I did was I picked a field that was downwind of me. So in other words, I had a tailwind to get to it, right? Because the other thing is, like, the one thing you don't want to do is come up short of whatever it is you're aiming for. And in this case, there were trees around the field, and I'd rather touch down in the field and go into the trees on the other side than not make the field, right? So in other words, I'd rather come in hot, like I'm doing right now, by the way. I'd rather come in hot, and there's one rule of thumb that I've always thought was really good, and again, we'll pull that yoke back and help us slow down. One rule of thumb that I always thought was pretty good, or I don't know if it's a rule of thumb, but a statement, is it's better to go off the end of a runway slowing down than it is to come up short of the runway if you're in an emergency. And so that's what I did. I initially put down too many flaps. I put down a notch of flaps when I thought I had the field made, and then almost immediately thereafter I put down a second notch of flaps, and then I realized that that was not a good idea, and so I went back to one notch, and then I just slipped it into the field once I made it, and I stopped it in the field, which was great, but you know, kind of the point of the whole thing being, even in the sim, like, pay attention to how much fuel you have. And here I am a day later, and look at that. You know, look at this. This is a clown show. You know, I mean, that's poor. Avionics off, lights off, mags off, master and battery switches off. We'll set the parking brake. So yeah, you know, so flight simulation, if you sim the way you fly, I mean, it's a very useful tool, and it apparently didn't teach me anything yesterday. But anyway, so in terms of the driver, my impressions are that it's very, very good. We got a couple, maybe 3 hesitations throughout the entire flight. However, so the last one, 610.47, I had 0 stutters. The first the first driver test I've ever done with 0 stutters was the last one, 610.47. This one had maybe 3, it might have been 2. However, this one is better than the ones before 610.47, in my opinion. Now let's take a look at the data, and we'll see if I'm right. All right, looking at the data here, there's a couple of things that are really pretty interesting. Average FPS, I have my cap set at 58, so that's, you know, roughly what it's going to be. 1% FPS low. Those are the 1% worst FPS values. So that's 44.4, which is pretty darn good. 0.1, these are the 0.1% of worst frames, 23.9. Over here, it says stuttering 2.04 seconds. But if you look at variances, this is the time difference between consecutive frame time values. So 0.18% of the time, there was a greater than 12 millisecond difference between frame times. Now, that's very, very low. And so I don't believe this stuttering 2.04 seconds at all. That's just what they qualify, what threshold is met that qualifies as stuttering as far as their statistics are concerned. But if you look at the actual variances between frame times, 99.82% are under 12 milliseconds. Anything under 16 milliseconds is perfect for the setup that I have. And the way you would think about that is divide your monitor refresh rate by 1,000, and that's going to give you how many milliseconds you should be targeting, right? And so mine is 16.66. Anything under 16.66 is a very good frame time for a 60 hertz monitor, which is what I have. So this over 12 milliseconds doesn't really even faze me. Now, there are some spikes, and you can see that. And were these the stutters? Possibly, but I don't remember seeing one near Anguilla, which would be here at the end, towards the end of the flight. Now let's compare this to 610.47, which was the previous driver under the exact same conditions. Now remember this, 44.4, 23.9. This is the previous driver then. 43.2, 20.1. So the 0.1 low FPS low went from 20.1 on the last driver to 23.9 on this one. So that's like a 20% improvement, over a 20% improvement. That's pretty darn good right there. Now, if we look at both, this is the previous 610.47. If we scale this to 0 to 100 milliseconds, this gives us a fair comparison. You can see the thick gray line in here is very, very smooth. Very, very smooth. These are you know, little spikes. They're obviously look bigger now that we're scaled lower. Now let's look at the current driver, 610.62, on the same thing. And you can see right in here in particular, that gray line moves. So that says to me that the previous driver was perhaps a little bit better right in that scenario, right? But again, this I do think the last driver was smoother, 610.47. Again, this is the 610.47 on the top, and this is 610.62 on the bottom. Not a whole lot of difference in the 1% FPS low, but you can see in the 0.1% FPS low, technically the 610.47 driver is better. Again, I'm sorry, the 610.62 driver is better. I think 610.47 is actually smoother. Like I said, if we look at the L charts, the frame times are very, very similar. The 610.47 is slightly lower frame times down here than the 610.62. 610.47 is in red, and it's slightly better. Slightly better. Here's where they are a little different. This on top is the 610.47, down here 610.62, and you can see over 97% of the frames for 610.47 are less than 2 milliseconds, which is extremely consistent. For 610.62, that number drops to about 95.5%. So it's a little, I mean, I would say that's, you might not notice it, but it's statistically different. And again, here, these are the less than 8 milliseconds, these yellow ones, and it's obviously lower here in 610.47. So my personal opinion is that 610.47 is a little bit better, but if 610.47 didn't exist, 610.62 would be just exceptional. And I also have a Patreon set up now. If you like what I'm doing and you want to support the channel, that's a great way to do it. Or you can also join the channel here on YouTube. You can just click the join button below. I'd really appreciate your support. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them in the comments section below. And I hope everybody's doing well. Talk soon.